before I start, when Carlos invited me over to address you as a group of students in the United States, I said, why? Wow, what the hell am I going to do? Because first of all, one of the reasons I'm here is, if you were to interview me on a one-to-one basis and ask me, what's the chip on your shoulder that you carry throughout your professional career? It's precisely, I applied, but I never came for a postgraduate degree, either to the US, to Europe, or to any other place. The speed at which my career, my professional career was developing, gave me the excuse, because I'm not going to say it was the argument, it was more an excuse of saying I'm going to stay put and work in corporations. But that's one of the few things that I've always felt that is lacking in my background, not having a postgraduate degree or a graduate degree outside of Mexico. Then again, when I said, wow, they're inviting me to Harvard to talk to all of you, I said, that's going to be interesting. So you're going to find quite a different perspective on how I envision graduate and postgraduate education outside of Mexico, especially in the US. I built the presentation and what I'm going to be sharing with you basically from a marketing perspective, because you have a very varied background. I don't expect to teach you about education. I don't expect you to teach you about politics. But at the end of the day, I remember one of the most famous authors in marketing claims that marketing is everything. Marketing is how you sell and present yourself. And you can be a brand, a product, a service, a university, a school, or even you. Actually, that's why political marketing is now such a trendy topic in many places, because marketing at the end of the day is how we sell and present ourselves. So I'm going to start first. This week I asked my team in the bank to go out, and they went visiting Politécnico Nacional, the UNAM, I guess some people from Tec de Monterrey and some from Ibero, all of it Mexico City, so it's not a red sample of the country, just to ask these college students, what do they think about graduate education outside of Mexico? So I'm going to push the button. Oh, no. Hold on.
Sí, sí me gustaría estudiar en el extranjero.
Porque los programas que ellos ofrecen son, bueno, yo los he visto, son muy completos, además de que también tienes la oportunidad de estudiar la maestría y ya de ahí ellos tienen la oportunidad de contactarte con las empresas transnacionales.
En mi carrera hay como no solo más oportunidades, sino más como herramientas para continuarla.
Que puedes encontrar en otro país pues es muy grande, ¿no? Tanto diferentes personas, culturas, idiomas, más que nada las culturas.
Te ayuda a desarrollar técnicas que pues aquí no están y que allá te pueden facilitar.
Siento que estudiar en el extranjero es una experiencia interesante y me gustaría como abrir mi mundo, conocer otras realidades.
Sí, me gustaría estudiar en el extranjero porque pues, las posibilidades de crecimiento fuera del país son bastante amplias.
Porque desgraciadamente en nuestro país están enamorados del extranjero, las empresas están enamoradas del extranjero, entonces sería una oportunidad muy grande para mi vida profesional.
Es muy importante porque aprendes muchas cosas, no solamente en el ámbito académico, sino te desarrollas como persona porque aprendes a vivir solo, ser independiente.
No solo es ir a una escuela diferente, sino es el conocer cómo funcionan otras personas a través del mundo y comparar de esa misma manera lo que pasa en tu país para poder regresar y hacer algo en tu país.
Bueno, porque siento que esto abriría puertas laborales muy grandes y pues tendría un mayor desarrollo profesional.
Vas a aprender como desde otra perspectiva sobre tu carrera.
En Harvard me gustaría estudiar porque es una de las universidades más reconocidas.
Escuela Internacional de Finanzas y Negocios en Londres, y siento que tiene programas académicos muy interesantes que podrían ayudarme a desarrollar todas mis habilidades.
Tengo dos opciones, es en Inglaterra o en Italia.
Cualquier lugar de Europa creo que sería muy interesante por la historia que compartimos con ellos.
Y me gustaría estudiar en Australia.
A mí me gustaría estudiar en Francia.
En lo personal me gustaría estudiar en Alemania.
En Alemania.
Un posgrado en Alemania.
Me gustaría ir a Estados Unidos a estudiar.
Sí, principalmente yo creo que en Londres o en Barcelona.
En Estados Unidos hay una Universidad de Princeton, me gusta.
En universidades de Estados Unidos o de Europa.
Me gustaría estudiar en Los Ángeles o en Nueva York, ya sé, sueño muy alto, pero...
En Australia.
Algún lugar en Asia.
Me gustaría como Nueva York.
Hacer un posgrado en Nueva York.
Lo haría yo creo que en Europa.
Los países al norte como Estados Unidos o Canadá me atraen.
En este momento no podría solventar esos gastos.
No tengo la solvencia.
No tengo la solvencia.
Yo creo que no podría solventar los gastos al 100% por mí misma allá.
Cualquier apoyo económico familiar es bueno, pero en realidad sí podría lograrlo sin la beca.
Pero me gustaría tener la solvencia económica en un futuro.
La solvencia económica no la tendría.
Buscaría una beca, porque en este momento no estoy en la mejor situación económica.
No tengo medios porque no trabajo, pero buscaría yo creo que el apoyo familiar más que todo, y si se puede, una beca sería esencial.
Digo, yo tengo los medios para llegar allá, pero es mucho mejor hacerlo por aquí, por la escuela, porque te revalidan y pues tienes más posibilidades también.
We did around 100 interviews. Mexico City again, half of them I asked them to be public universities, half of them private universities. Raise your hands, how many of you went to private universities in Mexico? So what you realize, I found 3 interesting insights. And 100 people in a survey, it's a reportable base for the guys or the persons studying here math or statistics. It's not a representative base, but what I found surprising was, one, around 90% of them said, yes, we want to study a postgraduate degree, and yes, we want to study it outside of Mexico. The second one, very surprising, I was sharing with Carlos and some of you outside before beginning, was more than half did not want to come to the US. They were talking Europe and Barcelona and Germany. I don't know if they find it more fun, more cool. It was interesting. But half of them said, we want to go to Europe. Or there was somebody mentioning Asia or China. The third one that I think is the most challenging one for the country and for Mexico is that around 70% of them, as you heard, say, I don't have the money and I don't have the means to get to the US. No, it's a challenge. No? So based on that, let me start by sharing with you who am I. Carlos shared a little bit of it. I come from a marketing background. I majored in economics. I really didn't like economics. I liked a lot the appeal of marketing in a company called Procter & Gamble that I guess for some of you, and in those days that I began my career, it was kind of the school of brand management and marketing, no? And actually it was never called marketing. If some of you have heard about it or know people, the marketing team in Procter has always been fascinating because it was called the brand management team. It's all about brands. So here I'm basically sharing with you some of the brands that in the last almost 30 years I've been working in. That goes from packaged goods, financial services, airline, quite eclectic, but has given me a very interesting perspective on how much relevant and important is to understand what you stand for and what a brand is relevant for. So after this I went into, let me share with you the agenda that I gathered. First of all, I'm going to share with you some basic numbers that I got from some studies, Googling. I Googled last week, education in the US, Mexicans studying abroad, and got some key insights on some information to share quickly with you as hard data to understand where the future of education, where the future of Mexicans studying abroad, and what are the challenges. I'm going to share with you also what to learn and why learning. Mexico and you personally as a brand. From my personal experience, and granted its bias towards multinational companies, management, brand management, and marketing, what I believe are the critical skills of the future, what are the challenges and opportunities, and share with you a little bit of some eclectic ideas regarding education that I think might benefit you. I went to a study called Open Doors, or Doors Open. You can download it for free, and basically claims that there's 800,000 foreign students studying university or postgraduate degrees in the United States as we speak. That's 4% of the total population, but when you look at the places of origin, won't surprise you, and you must have some friends, 29% come from China, 12% from India, 2% from Mexico, 3% from Taiwan. So this kind of shows you where are all these people coming from. What surprised me is, here you see what do they study. Undergraduate, 41%, graduate, 38%, what they call optional practical training that are probably diplomas on short-term courses, etc., 12%. I didn't understand the one on non-degree. That must be they're coming here to study cooking, I guess, somewhere, no? This is the field of study. And this is, remember, this is all international students. Those are the 800,000 that I mentioned to you from all nationalities studying like you are in the United States. Business and management, engineering, math and computer science. I was surprised. You're listening to me okay back there, Mario? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Only 10%. When we look at the technical world and the digital savvy world we're living in, I was surprised a little bit that only 10% were behind math and computer sciences. 64%, to the point of what I just shared with you in the video, claim, and again, this is all international students. I couldn't get the segmentation for Mexicans. 64% are personal or family funds. 21%, I guess, is help and either loans or scholarships from the schools. 9%, and foreign government, only 7%. Big challenge. No? Now, this is the fact sheet on Mexico. How many, does anybody have an idea how many Mexicans, or what's the number of Mexicans studying college or postgraduate degrees in Mexico nowadays? Anybody had a feeling? I Googled that this morning because I forgot to get the number, and the estimate ran between 2.2 and 3 million people in your generation, above your generation or below, claim to be studying at college, at university, a master's degree or a doctoral degree in Mexico. Around 2.2 to 3 million. Here you can see there are 14,000 of you in the US. And this includes every single undergrad, grad, master degree, PhD of people claiming to be Mexican. Carlos was asking me, would this include Mexicans that are from Mexican origin living in the US? I don't know how the methodology is exact. My guess, if it's something, it might be underestimated, because there must be some of you, and it can happen to you, that your family is living in the US, that you're Mexican, but I don't know if you're registering yourselves as US citizens. So it's only 14,000 people. If you see, here it mentioned we're the 9th country, remember that 2%? According to an article that I saw yesterday, President Peña Nieto claims that by 2020, he would like to have 100,000 Mexicans studying in the US. I think that's cool. It's a great target. It's a huge gap, if you agree. We're only 6 years away from that. Now, this is Mexico. What doesn't surprise me that we have so many Chinese students in the US. But when I look at South Korea, for example, smaller country in population than we are, 70,000 South Korean students here. Vietnam also has a bunch of people studying here. Actually, I was surprised. Brazil is behind Mexico. Brazil has less students attending American universities. Now, there's a study called The Path Forward that I also found, and it's the future of graduate education, and there were some interesting insights also about education in the US. Let me go to the first one. Only US-based, by the way, this is not segmented, or at least, well, there was a more detailed study, I'm not going to lie to you, that you could buy. And from my stinginess, I just went to the cover chart. I didn't download and pay for it. But by, I guess by diversity origin, this is the aspirations of what white, black, Asian, and Hispanics in the US claim they would aspire to finish. Less than bachelor degree, look at graduate degree. Among Asians, 50% of them. And the question is very simple, no? You go and ask people that are finishing high school, to what do you aspire? Half of them are saying, I'm going to finish a graduate degree, okay? Another one on the future of education, and I can count it here. Women or female students. Actually, there was an article, are you familiar with the Atlantic Review, the magazine? About a year ago, they published a very interesting article called Not Women at Work, but Women in Leadership Positions. And it claimed that in the US, 51% of degrees are being attained by females, by women, and I can see it here. Look at the curves of growth in the past 40 years. The speed at which this is changing, and the speed at which women are going to be part of leadership. When I began my career at Procter & Gamble, and you're going to be shocked at this because probably most of you were not even born. I began my career exactly 30 years ago. I was 21 years old, and I joined Procter & Gamble in Mexico, brand manager. And we're talking 1984, and my boss, my boss's boss, my boss's boss's boss, and my boss's 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 boss, 4 levels above me, guess what? They were all women. And in that generation, my generation, we had men that left the company because of that. They had an issue in reporting to women. Actually, they called me in. I had been like 3 months as a junior brand assistant in Ariel. I guess you're all familiar with Ariel, the detergent brand. You saw it on my background. And they asked me if I had any issues reporting to women. And I said, come on. I grew up with my parents divorced when I was 10, so I grew up with my mother, my grandmother, my elder sister. No, I don't have a problem. But it was a big issue. Then again, it speaks very highly about a company like P&G that 30 years ago had so many women being hired within that organization. No? Now, this is the most concerning one to the point of Carlos and all of you sitting here. This is the percentage of international students remaining in the US after 5 years of completing their PhDs. Look at the Chinese, 92%. India, 85%. They didn't have Mexico. All countries, 65%. Let me ask you, how many of you aspire to stay in the US when you graduate? Raise your hands. Don't be shy, don't be shy. That's around 40% of this sample, or this group, of this universe. I think that's one of our challenges. No? I love that definition that they claim the US, one of the best competitive advantages that we've never understood about the United States is not that they have money, that they have technology, they got brain power. I'm sure that's why all of you came and attended universities here. They've got brain power and they've got outstanding superior education. They are a net importer of brains and talent into their country, and it's been part of their DNA. No? And that's a big fight that countries like Mexico, etc. have. Thank you. Good, you're my timekeeper. That's cool. I forgot, but I also have that. Now, I guess when you look at education, the first one is what to learn. The first question that I guess all of you ask yourselves. By the way, how many of you are in business or management studies now? Raise your hand. Okay. How many are in social sciences, government, politics? Wow, oh my God, this is political. I gotta be careful if I criticize some people from our country. So I guess the first one is what to learn. The second question that we seldom ask ourselves, why learn the things? And the most important, at the speed that everything is changing, how to learn it. It was very interesting what Carlos said. Do you like movies? You saw the Oscar where Mr. Cuarón won the Oscar like 2 months ago. I don't know if you noticed something, you probably did, the famous selfie that they took themselves. And they mentioned 2 brands, if you recall. One was Twitter. I think they mentioned Facebook. They mentioned Samsung. You saw in my background, I worked almost 10 years in Blockbuster Video, that is now dead as we speak in the US, still alive in Mexico because of video games. But it was very, in those days, it's very interesting that it was a media and movie industry, a huge industry, a competitive advantage of America, by the way. I mean, Hollywood and the way they portray the world, that's a competitive advantage that the United States has. The first time in the Oscars history that they ever mentioned a brand. Think about it. They never allowed any sponsor to be mentioned inside their event. And they mentioned Twitter, and they used Twitter, and they mentioned Facebook. That talks about the speed at which our world is changing. So how to learn all these, how do they call it in English? MOOCs, MOOCs. The multiple open online courses. The amount of information that you can download now and attend courses at MIT, courses from museums, Fudan University in Shanghai, it's amazing. And that's going to transform the world. And I think that's one of the unique opportunities. When I see all these kids, younger than you, saying in Mexico, I don't have money, maybe they won't need money, because if they're sitting in Michoacán, in Mexico City, in Monterrey or Veracruz, and they can download a course, that will start transforming the world of education. And that can be a great advantage for countries like ours. Now, I talked a little bit and shared with you education, and I'm not going to be preaching on that one. Then I look at, Future Brand is one of those few specialized agencies that measures the brand related to a country, or countries as brand. So they do rankings. It's a huge rep sample around the world. They don't talk only about if you like the brand. This is what they measure of every single country. Their value system, the quality of life in that country. Is that country good for business? The heritage and the culture of that country, and tourism. How many people visit? Do they like visiting? If you were to Google a year ago, because we did some stuff at Banamex, we worked very closely with the Mexican government to promote our country. We're El Banco Nacional de Mexico, no? The brand is in our name. Actually, at some points, several years ago, you might remember that, the government wanted to take away the brand name of the bank. It was too close to home, no? Being El Banco Nacional de Mexico, I guess a little like Bank of America here, no? It's a nice brand name. Those were clever marketeers 130 years ago that they founded the bank. Tourism is a challenge, and working with them, we realized that 10 publications, around a year ago, 10 publications on the top Google list. When you ask key places to visit in the world, Mexico did not appear. By the way, places not to visit, Mexico was up there among the top 10, including Syria, including Pakistan, including Afghanistan. So that's a brand issue. That's a positioning issue for the country. Now, this study shows the top 25 country brands. This is 1 year old. You can download it from Future Brand. These are the top 25 countries. You're going to find Switzerland, Canada, Japan. It was very interesting that you got Costa Rica. Costa Rica is among those 25. And it's a mixture of all the variables that I just shared with you. It's not only which one is the most rich, but it's the quality of life, the opportunities to do business, tourism, blah, blah, blah. Now, good news, these are the future 15 countries, according to them. There we've got Mexico, place number 8. Then again, beaten by our neighbors, across the Arab, Chile, Malaysia, Estonia, Iceland, you've got Turkey, you've got Thailand. But these are the future based on expectations, and I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the current measure. In good to do business with top 25 countries, we are not there today. Yes, we have all the future potential, as the Brazilians do, but we're not on the top 25 good for business. Tourism, top 25, we are not there today. And by the way, you will all agree with me, if Mexico can offer something with the neighborhood of the US, is, hey, why don't you come and visit me? And the last one, this was the most surprising to me and shocking, honestly, because I do strongly believe we're one of those few countries that have an outstanding heritage and culture. We don't appear there. So these are the challenges as a country that we're facing. Objective challenges that need a lot of effort, and realizing now that all of you, or the majority of you, are working in politics, this is it. If you want to fix the country, we also need to fix the image of the country. Now, interesting, and you're familiar with population pyramids. On the left side, you're going to see how you've got males, females by age segment, what is defined as a youthful country, what is defined as an intermediate, what is a mature country like the US based on their demographics and age, and what's a post-mature or old country. That's where they claim Germany is going to be in just 11 years. Old people. When you see there's probably people older than 40, 50 years old. No wonder they'll need to be net importers of Turkish and other people. I have European friends that I say, you better bring in more people from your ex-colonies, no? Otherwise you're going to be dying and be old. They need to do it. Now, very interesting. I think if I was to ask you, you will all agree, and I can see you here, Today, in 2014, Mexico is a youthful country. We've got a big demographic bonus. This statistic I got out of the internet again. I downloaded, I just Googled Mexico population pyramid 2030. Guess what? When you are in your early 40s or late 30s, just 16 years from now, we're going to be a mature country. Look at how similar we're going to be to the US. That changes the perspectives. That changes the way we need to understand our country. We're going to be older. Your generation is going to be the majority. Let me ask you, how many of you were born after 1990? Raise your hand. Okay. After 1985? After 1980? So all of you are the famous generation. My daughter, that is 14 years old, is the last. She was born in 1999, the last of the millennials. Are you familiar with the concept of millennials? Millennials is basically the generation that comes after Generation X and Generation Y. Is the ones that were born after 1980, 85, that reach more or less adulthood in the year 2000, no? We're going to be a mature country. That changes our perspective because for many decades we've been thinking of ourselves as a youthful country, average age, teenagers, and that's going to dramatically change, and it's going to go like this in the next 16 years. Now let me talk about brand new. First of all, and I believe he's a professor here, I don't know if he's in Harvard, Tom Peters, he wrote a great book called Brand New, and the same way that a brand is measured, like Ariel, like Coca-Cola, like Starbucks, like Apple, like Nike, or a brand needs to be understood as a country as a brand, you need to understand who are you as a brand. There's a great concept developed by Bain & Company, the consultants, called the Net Promoter Score. Is anybody familiar with it? It's the hottest experience measure that you can apply to anything in life. And they did this research. They conducted several questionnaires to identify in any survey about customer experience what's the best questions that correlates to success in the long term. And the question is very simple. Would you recommend to a friend or a close family member to attend Harvard? Tell me who would say yes. Raise your hands. Okay? So that's, let me count quickly. 2, 4, 6, it's like 20. Who would not recommend to a close family member or to a friend to attend Harvard? 1. What's the Net Promoter Score of Harvard? 20 less 1, 19. That's very good. There are 20 promoters of the university seen here and 1 detractor. And there's neutral people sometimes that say, some of you did not raise your hand. If you apply that, the Net Promoter Score, to a country, by the way, to a politician, if we ran the Net Promoter Score, we could do it right now with Mr. Peña Nieto or the Mexican government. Right? How many of you, and interesting, the question goes, a close relative or friend. How many of you would recommend to a close relative or a friend to live in Mexico? Raise your hand. Okay. Not bad. How many would not recommend living in Mexico to a 1, 2, 3? So the Net Promoter Score, you see who's promoting, who's detracting. That's think about it, brand new, all of you, when you walk out, is what people say about you when you leave the room. And that's the Net Promoter Score. Would they recommend you as a professional, as a friend, as a compadre or as a comadre? That's the challenge. Actually, if you look at the graph below, the brand new, it's your unique self, what the world needs, and that's your brand. And that's something that very few people dedicate time to. Now that you work, that most of you are in the social science and politics, that's a brilliant politician, no? Politicians have understood through life what the brand is all about. No? And the measure that I'm mentioning to you of Net Promoter Score as a simple way of would you recommend a politician or what a politician does is a clear and understandable thing that measures the quality, the stature, and the impact and relevance of any brand. Now, what do I think are critical skills for the future? And you're going to notice I did not include technically or digitally savvy. For one reason, I would assume that in your generation, that's a given. That's 20? Finished? Oh my, oh, good. I mean, I have 3 more charts. Drive and sense of urgency. I've seen drive and sense of urgency is you make things happen quick. Second one, creative, analytical, and strategic thinking. Creative is, I'm creative, I bring crazy new ideas. Analytical is, I understand how to handle the numbers. Strategic, I connect the dots between being creative and being analytical. Execution ability, again, making things happen. You know what's execution? Alignment, acting, and adjusting. Most of the organizations, the people in the world are not good at executing. I might tell you probably our government in Mexico is not good at executing. We're probably great at planning. But if we're stuck where we are as a country, and you see many organizations, they're not good at execution. We discuss a lot planning and strategy and ideas and vision. It's about making things happen. Think at the people that you admire the most. They execute extremely well. They make things happen with drive, with sense of urgency, strategically, creatively, and analytically. Teamwork won't surprise you. Do you remember when Mexico won the Olympic gold medal against Brazil? Did you celebrate that here? That was here last year. Yeah? What was the biggest news the next day about that? What was the big insight? It was the first medal that Mexico won in an Olympics since 1930-something, when the Berlin Olympics happened with Hitler and all that crap, for a team sports. We've won a lot of medals in individual sports. That says a lot of our country. Collaboration and teamwork. That was the big news. First time in more than almost 80 years that Mexico won something, a gold medal, for teamwork, for sports in which we share the goal. And finally, it's going to be quite obvious for all of you, oral and written presentation skills. Don't underestimate that one. The elevator pitch is critical. What are the challenges? I think that the big elephant sitting in any meeting among Mexicans, I was polite because I know you were taking this, I don't want to get into problems, and we just got a big fraud by Oceanografía that screwed us in Mexico, so I was going to put the right word. The big elephant sitting among all those Mexicans is integrity, but it's not really integrity, it's a corruption problem that we are not comfortable talking about it. No? We still tolerate it. But in your generation, and I was going to bring a study that was done by Gabriela Riva, one of the best researchers, about the emerging Mexico, your generation and the generation below of you has 0 tolerance for corruption. It's not fancy hanging around with politicians that stole money from us. It's not fancy seeing scandals in our government organizations. It's not fancy, it's not nice anymore. People are tired of that, and that needs to change. That's a huge challenge for us. Second one, social responsibility. Is not in our DNA still. We're one of the countries that invest less in social responsibility. Our richest Mexicans are not giving back enough. As many of, and I'm going to talk about the US. You think Colombia, you think Brazil, you think Argentina, you think Chile, they give back more to their communities and their countries. And the third one, through diversity. That goes against what I'm telling about the Mexicans. You hang around as Mexicans, but also you need to be diverse. Diverse with gay people, diverse with international people. Think how many Chinese, South Korean, and African friends have you made here? True friends, understanding them. That's the future, that's the global world that we need. True friendship. Let's go and have some tequilas and talk deeply about our countries and who we are. Now, opportunities, I mentioned the demographic bonus. The second one that's been a missed opportunity for years for us is our neighborhood with the USA. We have a love-hate relationship with gringos. No? We like it, we have breakfast with cornflakes, we love Starbucks, we have all these American multinationals that have been, and many of you, probably your families, or you have worked for American companies. But we have like a strange relationship, no? Let's leverage and capitalize on that one. And the last one is very interesting on the digital front. Mexico is going to leapfrog in terms of mobile services. We cannot think the way the digital world evolved in the US that went from PCs to laptops and then to mobile. The speed at which Mr. Slim and company are changing us with the mobile devices, and I know this is like a Maverick 1980, this is a BlackBerry that they give us a Panamex, shame on us. I attended a Google presentation a about a year ago, everybody had their Samsungs, even iPhones. I was ashamed of sharing my BlackBerry, but still it's used. The mobile leapfrogging is going to go very, very fast. Mexicans today have 34% of them have access to internet on their mobiles. By next year, it's going to be 60%. And you know why? The average speed at which Mexicans are changing their cell phones is once a year. The sixth eclectic idea to finish, and I'll take 4 more minutes. One of them, we talk a lot about, you're familiar with the balance of payments. When I hear that 40%, at least of this group, and maybe all of you are not true, 65% of people want to stay to live in the US, let them be. If you want to stay and develop your professional lives in the US, let it be. So I think that we should have a balance of brains. And by that I mean like balance of payment. If we lose Mexicans, we better be very good at bringing people from the outside. Argentinos, Peruanos, Spanish, let them come in. Some of the most interesting and boldest intellectual ideas developed in our country in the past 100 years were foreign people coming to teach us. Los famosos refugiados españoles, ¿no? They built Colegio de México, they built one of our best faculties. I don't have a problem if you guys want to stay, but let's be sure as a market and as a country that we bring and have a positive balance of brains between Mexico and the outside. Digi-traditional, what happens with digital savviness? We forget some of the basics of the traditional world and the basics of traditional strategy and thinking. Did you see the movie Inception? Who saw Inception? Remember who's the star? Not everybody. Everybody must like Inception, no? What's the big idea of the movie? The big idea of the movie, everybody says, oh, they get into people's brains. No, the big idea, and by the way, it sounds like a marketing idea, they get into people's brains to sell you an idea and that you believe it is your idea. That's the big insight of Inception. And that's what successful branded people do to you. They sit down with you, you say, wow, I had such a great idea. That's Inception. And that's a way of changing the world we operate. Arts, does anybody is majoring in arts? Any writers, any painters here? No. Arts as a lighthouse, I think it's critical. We tend to forget art, but if you think in literature, science fiction, think in painting, modern painting, that's the boldest ideas in terms of thinking about new ways of doing things, is the art people. You should hang around a little bit with artists. Be a little bit bohemian, have some booze with them, don't smoke. Oh, you can smoke. Now, the other one that I feel critical is the short form. The short form is like the haiku, the Japanese poems. We cannot tolerate anymore the speed at which the world is going. You need to understand how to write in the short form. And I'm going to give you an example. And the last idea that I would throw out is no anthems. I heard this once in a speech by one of these very crazy thinkers of the future. Anthems, el himno, is creating division. When we still see in the 21st century people fighting for a flag or a religion, that's very scary. That speaks a lot of ignorance, and that takes us back 2,000 years. So an idea about having no anthems would probably revolutionize the way we think in terms of leveraging global ideas and hanging around with other people. Now in the short form, does everybody like short stories? Augusto Monterroso is a very famous Guatemalan writer that used to live in Mexico, wrote one of the most famous short stories in Spanish literature. By the way, how many characters do I need in a tweet? Do you remember? 140, no? 140. That includes spaces, yes or no? Yes, it includes spaces. When I see most of the people tweeting, they're so bad at it. Because we're still thinking, dear Diego, blah, it's a long format in our mind. Short format, this short story is Cuando despertó el dinosaurio todavía estaba allí. You could dedicate it to the PRI, no? It's 51 characters. Second one, by the way, I think this is very relevant for all of you. It's called The Immigrant by a Mexican Lomelí. Is Olvide usted algo? Ojalá. It's 28 characters. When I talk to my people and my digital team, I say, we need to reinvent the short format. And that's few words, impactful, relevant. And we Mexicans, we love el rollo, no? Actually, you're right, I'm already late. And I'm Mexican, I'm late on that. So just to finish, a couple of things that I would like, that I see amazing in transforming the world. ICAP, these are French guys. They create a crowdsourcing creative community. So instead of going to somebody for creative ideas, you have 260,000 creative people around the world giving you ideas. Wow. This is transforming our industry. Another one that I had dinner with them here, Community Space. These guys are research on steroids. They build digital communities. They're actually based here in Boston. Amazing. Okay? And just to finish, I thought it was a relevant quote. And the most important for all of you at your age and what you're expecting to do in life. I remember this was one of my favorite poems when I started college, and believe me, time goes by very fast. And that's it. Thank you very much. I'll open it for questions and answers.
So, anybody want to ask a question? Could you introduce yourself and where do you come from?
Yeah. Can you use the microphone?
Yeah,
You don't really need it.
just if you can speak
Or
out
stand
loud.
up.
Yeah, stand up and speak out loud.
My name is Mauricio Forzan. I come from Washington Center. And well, my question is basically, well, first, excellent presentation. You talk about the national anthem, the anthem. What about it? You think that it's ignorance, or can you reproduce the idea again about
The concept of no anthems. No?
Yeah.
There's a theory that when you have anthems, and imagine soccer games. No, if you remember Guadalajara Atlas a few weeks back, I'm from Guadalajara, and they were las Chivas de Guadalajara, so they beat policemen, they were very aggressive, and think about Europe. The anthem is already creating division. When you have an anthem, and just imagine our own personal anthem about no la guerra and blah blah blah. The concept is that as much as we continue promoting anthems around the world, it's creating isolation. It's a famous book, this one, The Clash of Civilization. I don't remember, it's a history professor mentioning it's still perpetuating nationalities, and I'm different from you, and I have my own group of people. So it's that's what I called it, an eclectic idea. We can discuss it for many hours or days. But it says, if we were to eliminate anthems and look more at a global world and maybe think again, why don't we fight the Martians or any of all those other planets, could make a difference. That's what I meant.
Emilio?
Hi, Emilio Lezama from George Washington University. You mentioned the importance of Mexicans coming to the United States, which I think is fundamental, but don't you think it's even more important to get Americans and people from all over the world to go to Mexico? Because if you won't be able to move most Mexicans to other places in the world so that they get into the global community. But if you get more people from different countries to go to your country, then Mexico will be more interconnected. And it also will, we have a lot of problems with prejudices and xenophobia and all these things that are impeding certain growth. Don't you think, it works both ways?
Totally agree. That's the first concept that I mentioned over the balance of brains. That's what I agree with you. Let's export Mexicans. They can stay in the US or in Europe, but let's be sure that we bring foreigners. Right now we have an issue. Foreigners fear Mexico, think we're dangerous, they don't want to go there. I mean, I've worked for multinational companies for many years. Mexico is one of the few destinations that they don't like going to work to. They prefer going to Colombia, surprising, Chile, Argentina, Brazil. I think that's one of the challenges. So when I talk about the balance of brains, is being able to bring all those foreigners to get to know Mexico and understand what we're all about. If we're gonna naturally lose some of you, and some of you are gonna develop in professional careers that are not relevant or impactful in Mexico. We can bring those people and balance it and not be net losers of talent, but at least have a zero balance of brains between foreigners coming and Mexicans leaving. No?
I'm Raul Torres. I did my undergrad here at Harvard. Now I'm doing my master's at UW.
And my question goes to, so we're talking about bringing all these talents from Mexico, maybe back to have studied here in the US or in Europe, and go back to Mexico. But the question goes like, from your point of view, being in Procter & Gamble, now being in Banamex, what's your incentive of paying, let's say that you have a Harvard graduate student from the business school, what's your incentive of hiring one guy from a good university from the States, where you have to pay at least 3 or 4 times more than what you can pay to a guy from Libero, Itamo, or now? So what's like these kind of incentives that the business sector can have? Because it sounds really good, like, oh, we need all of you and all this. But once you get to like start doing numbers, it changes. So what's the main incentive of like the business sector to attract all this, knowing that it's more expensive?
I would say that in the examples that I've lived, I think that the challenge that you're mentioning is more for other typical Mexican organizations. A Banamex, that is Citigroup, a P&G, a PepsiCo, a Coca-Cola, does pay a premium and pays on the highest quartile to foreign Mexicans studying in foreign universities. So that one, they realize it and they want to bring that talent in. I think that the biggest challenge is that a lot of the opportunities that Mexico offers, including government, is not paying that pressure. When I joined P&G, I came out of Tec de Monterrey, and as I told you, I didn't have a master's degree. One of my best friends came from Stanford, master's degree in engineering. And one day, I got upset because I realized he was making 20% more money than I was as brand assistants. So I go to my boss and I say, what the hell, why is Ruben making more money than I do? He said, he comes from Stanford, Diego. He comes from Tec de Monterrey. This was many years ago. So there's a few companies, especially multinationals, that are willing and do pay for that talent. I think they're not the majority. And I think that with everything happening in terms of recession and slowdown of the economy in Mexico, that's been shrinking. But to your point, I think that should be a more pervasive policy throughout all job opportunities in the country. Because I understand very well your point of, why should I go back and you're going to pay me the same as somebody that did not invest the time, the effort, and the monies that I did here in the States.
Laura? Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Laura Vargas from Columbia University. And I'm wondering if you have comments on, you showed a graph of this sort of transition into a mature country in terms of age, et cetera. And I think in terms of how we change the branding also has to do with how our population grows in terms of education, et cetera. So we see a lot of the young generations right now. We hear generations such as Ninis, et cetera. So as that generation ages, is it a generation that is less prepared? And so is it a country that is mature, but it doesn't have quite the human capacity, or human development, human resource development target that we need to get to? I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on that and how, you know, how we go forward and we sort of reconcile this transition.
I think, I mean, you hit it right on the nail on the head. I think that's a challenge. That's what I wanted to share it with you. Do you think that in the next 15 years we're going to turn into a mature country in terms of age, where the average population might be in their 30s or early 40s? It's your generation. Yes, it's very concerning that they're not, that it's very concerning, and just let me give you the scope. You recall it's 14,000 of you studying in the United States. There's 3 million, more or less, studying college and above in Mexico. There's 6 million Ninis in Mexico. Those 6 million Ninis, now we like them, they're young, they're cool, they get drunk. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, they might be an issue for the country. Now, how do I see as a solution? Either the government delivers under promise of growth and speed of growth in the high single digits. Second, we deploy digital education capabilities for them. And that is that they access new courses, new ideas through digital means, through mobile. Otherwise, we're going to face a problem. 16 years from now, we're going to have an old generation of people that is absolutely ignorant. Ninis, we find it cool, no? I mean, you must have Nini brothers and sisters and friends, no? It's not going to be cool in 15 years. It's going to create a lot of problems because they're going to have families, they're going to be frustrated. Remember, after 30 years old, there's an article by a professor, I don't remember the name of the guy, an article that said after 35 years old in any country, people realize if they met and they're on the path to deliver their personal objectives. And the people that fail are the ones that turn cynical, frustrated, and create a problem for an organization, for a company, or for a country. So it's an issue, yeah. And I don't have the answer. If I had the answer, maybe somebody would pay me a good consultancy.
Hi, my name is Dinora. I'm studying Master in Public Policy at NYU. And about branding and the story, I'm just going to talk about from my perception, but I think that the story about what matters in life is changing, and we do not believe anymore in the American dream, etc. But I was wondering if you consider that, or how is that going to impact on transnationals and big companies about the way we understand work, success, life, money?
I would say that there are three trends that are very interesting, and it's in your generation, and I see it even more with the generation below yours, that is my daughters. You're right, the values, the interests of the millennials and the next generation, I don't know how they call it, are dramatically changing. It's not about power, it's not about money. My generation and the ones above were more about power, money, the famous baby boomer generation X saying, how much I'm worth, thus how much I value, thus how happy I am. That's changing, and it's changing. There's a dramatic change in your generation in cost-related, in social responsibility. I mentioned, if anybody wants, I'll share with you. I didn't want to bring it because we have not paid for it. The study about emerging Mexico, that is your generation and below, is very transformational. It's a different Mexico. When I say zero tolerance to corruption and the lack of integrity, it's a big issue in Mexico nowadays. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it wasn't. Now it's going to be a big problem. Second one, I think that, for example, multinational corporations are changing very quickly, and you see in the leadership a lot of foreigners. So the American multinational is changing very quickly, and while before that was a bunch of Americans running them, you get a lot of international people. Mexicans, Peruvians, Brazilians. Think about the multinationals that are having their leadership teams foreigners. They're understanding they need to change to a local adaptation of their global companies very quickly. The third one is the iconic brands or companies where people wanted to work. The Coca-Colas, the P&Gs, the IBMs are not hot anymore. Everybody wants to go, even myself. Remember that movie, the interns, that they go to Google, Owen Wilson. Gosh, I saw the movie and I said, that's me. When I went to Google Camp in San Francisco, I said, this is cool, I want to work. I wouldn't even, they wouldn't accept me with the examination. But it's changing dramatically. Your generation and the younger generation, it's all about Google, Facebook, Twitter. The amount of people I've lost of the younger generation in my team to digital companies is scary. Nobody's going anymore to IBM and to Price Waterhouse and to P&G. Even talking with friends at P&G, they tell me, we cannot recruit the best talent anymore because they want to go to digital companies or they want to be entrepreneurs. That's another one that we did not touch because we don't have time. The whole entrepreneurial spirit and drive in Mexico is changing very quickly. No? Before it's go and get a job at a big company like Banamex. No. The younger generation doesn't want to work in Banamex. They find financial services boring. They want to work in Google or Twitter or Facebook. No?
Last question, Rogelio.
Rogelio Hernandez, I'm a PhD student in chemical physics at Harvard. And my question is, I'm really excited about your talk and inspired about what is happening now in Mexico. Can you tell us more about what the private sector is doing in terms of digital media for education?
A couple of things. One, you see several companies investing a lot. Banamex is doing it already. We have the digital university for bank employees. I think that's transformational. Because if you think about a branch manager in a Banamex in the middle of nowhere, having the opportunity to learn financial education skills and basics of management on their PC, that's fantastic. And that should raise the level and the quality of our people. Second one, there are companies investing heavily also in digital transformation schools or diplomas. I think that the moment we can get all the teachers of Harvard, MIT, Yale, the best universities in Europe, and have them on the screen, probably with subtitles in some cases if they're in English, that will put us up to par as a Mexican economy and people. That's the only solution. We cannot wait for buildings and for construction and for teachers. I mean, the multiple online digital transformation for education. The other day I saw a graph about technology, which industries are going to be transformed the most dramatic way, and second, will have the more impact. Number one, digital education, or education through digital means. It's going to be huge. And I think the Mexican government needs to understand it. Now, there's a trick. It's not about the hardware. Remember all this scandal in Mexico when they had these screens that were sold to the schools, primary schools, I did Digimedia, I don't, something they did with, Enciclomedia, I hope nobody is related. Enciclomedia, you know, I once heard somebody tell me, Diego, the problem is not the hardware, the problem is content. The problem is not putting a screen. The problem is who the hell is speaking on that screen and what's the content that you're delivering. And that's the thing that needs to be transformation. Thank you. Gracias.